Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we will start our discussion, I would like to ask you to make this meeting as a discussion with the questions answers. So in case if you have any questions, just stop me by, ask me, and I will explain you some points. As far as I see, you have compressed air driven or turbine based ventilators. You have just turbine based. You haven't compressed air driven ventilators supplied. Yeah, right?
Yes.
Practically in our product range, we have practically the same design of all three models. So the functionality of compressed air driving Uvent-A-S is almost the same as turbine-based Uvent-T-S and Uvent-M-S, and they have the same set of ventilation modes, the same type of parameters. The only difference is that compressed air driving ventilator doesn't have low pressure oxygen operation mode comparing to turbine based, where this mode, the ventilator is capable to work with the oxygen source pressure less than 2 bars. So basically we will build up our discussion or demonstration in the terms of setting up the ventilator and usage of the ventilator in the patient. That's the first part. The second part will be related to ventilation modes, and basically I will explain you key parameters of or key figures of advent and provent ventilation, the difference, and why for you to understand, to explain to your customers. And as the final part, I will explain you some new features that became available with the latest software upgrade that you will be able to get with the new delivered ventilators, as well as with the existing ventilators can be upgraded for these features. Do you have any ventilators with you during this training? No answers. So no ventilator. Okay. I will share the screen and I will demonstrate you. I will make a demonstration with the simulation software. That will be more useful for you to see the interface of the machine, and I will explain you the main parts related to this topic. Can you see it?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as soon as we start our ventilator, it is very important to perform some obligatory steps in setting up the machine, because this is a life support device, and the most important to make sure that this life support device is working correctly. There are no issues in the hardware, no issues in the software. All the sensors and tubing are connected properly, and device is ready for life support. So the patient safety must be not compromised due to misuse or due to misconnection or misfunction of the ventilator. So every time you're running ventilator, and if you are not in emergency, you have to perform at least 2 tests. It's a device check and breath circuit check. So by tapping this device check, you will see a list of tests to be performed by the ventilator, and basically, if all the circuit and the flow sensor is connected, you can start. The machine will give you a reminder about what kind of circuit or example of circuit connections to be done on the ventilator with the open patient Y. You have to check and confirm. Then the test will be performed with the automatic report about test succeeded or failed. In case of any of tests is failed, you have an option either to skip this test or to repeat this test. It is common that you forgot something to connect, and or there is a leakage in the circuit, and then the system can give you a message that the test has been failed. So you can check the circuit, you can check the tubings, and solve the issue and repeat the test. Basically, that's enough. Or you can skip the test, but this skipping will not allow you to use the ventilator in case if at least single test is failed. That means device is not ready for life support function. So the number of tests consists of open circuit tests, and then there is another part which is related to occluded circuit. So you have to occlude the patient Y and proceed with the testing. The final test requires the disconnect to unplug the ventilator from mains, and in order to check the battery changeover switch. So we unplug the ventilator and test the ventilator successfully switched for power supply from internal battery. And by the end of this test, you will get the report that all tests successfully finished. And on the right upper corner, you will see the date and time of successfully performed device check. So you can exit from this menu, and then you can proceed with the breath circuit check. Why it is important to perform both of the tests? Because breath circuit check also measuring the parameters of breathing circuit. That means compliance and resistance of breathing circuit, and type of the flow sensor connected is recognized by the ventilator. And if you ignore this test, then the accuracy of the measurements could be compromised, or some of the leakages cannot be recognized by the system. So we select the breath circuit check, select the start. The ventilator asks us to open patient Y. We open it, perform this test, then occlude patient Y, occlude it, and perform the test. As soon as we have both of tests successfully performed, we have a green light. In case if at least one test is failed, one or more failed, then you will get a red light indicating that the device is not ready for life support function. So if the ventilator is being prepared not in emergency way for life support function, for ventilation, it is important. Yes, I can hear you. I see that somebody raised a hand.
Yes, hello, hi, how are you? I have a question regarding the circuit geometric test.
Yes.
It refers to which part of the ventilator exactly, and what does it mean?
Could you please repeat? Your microphone settings is the sound is very low, and I cannot hear you properly. Could you please repeat?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's better.
The circuit geometric test.
Yes.
To which part of the ventilator it actually refers, and what does it mean?
It's referring to all the tubings. Hermetic test, it's a test of the tubings connected to the ventilator, that they are connected without leakages. That means that outer circuit, breathing circuit, and their connections to a humidifier and to other parts of breathing circuit are connected properly with no leakages. It is a good question because in some kind of circuits, if we are speaking about the usage of circuit with a humidification, active humidification system, humidifier, the humidification chamber could have a leakage because of this water feeding system. In this case, you have to bypass the humidification chamber and repeat the test. Because for some kind of circuits, for some kind of humidification chambers, and these water feeding systems, the leakage could be recognized by the ventilator as non-hermetic circuit. In this case, you will need to bypass reconnect the circuit, bypassing the humidification chamber and repeat the test. Is that clear?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So as soon as we finalize this tests, we are able to start with the patient configuration. But before we will go there, I would like to repeat once again about the preparation of the device. Why it is important? It is important especially to ensure patient safety. So in case of urgency, it's normal that a ventilator urgently required for life support function and you have no time to perform full device check. It is recommended at least to perform breath circuit check, which will take about 30 seconds of your time management for a critical situation. But even in case if it is not possible and the situation is really urgent and the patient has no tolerance for this time to wait for 30 seconds for the breath circuit check, you can start ventilation without checking. But it is strongly recommended on first occasion when the patient will be stabilized, you can connect patient to alternative ventilation method like an ambu bag and then perform the full test, breath circuit check, and connect patient back. In this case, only by this case, you will be able to ensure that patient safety is guaranteed and ventilator works properly and no potential risk for patient life. I would like to point out that in case of emergency, if a clinician take a decision to ventilate patient without testing device, the responsibility for ventilation is on the shoulders of clinicians. In any case, the responsibility of ventilation is on clinician. But if ventilator fail due to different reasons, this failure and the potential consequences that can come to the patient life status will be not considered as a normal operation of the device, since the pre-use check is compulsory and important for use life support device before application on a patient. So when we perform these tests and our device looks good, everything is fine, we need to configure our patient. Never ignore this stage. Again, never, because all the alarms, all the not just alarm limits, but alarm criteria and other parameters, they are linked to patient anthropometric data. That means that never ignore this stage and try always to set up patient parameters according to clinical situation, according to our patient that is we are going to ventilate. So you have two options, either to select the current patient. In this case, all settings related to previously ventilated patient will be applied for ventilation, or we can select a new patient and then the ventilator will give us another window to select the age category, sex, and anthropometric parameters of the patient. So here we have a possibility to select adult, pediatric, or neonatal. In some ventilators which are configured, neonatal mode can be hidden, but it's related to the configuration of the device, hardware configuration of the device. So if we select adult patient, you have a possibility to select a sex of patient, male or female. It is also important because, as you can see, the ideal body weight formula calculation is different for males and females. And it is enough just to set up height of the patient. So the ventilator will automatically calculate ideal body weight for this patient. Optionally, we can select the ventilation coefficient and set up ventilation coefficient, how many milliliters per kilogram will be used initially for ventilation in case if we will start in volume control, in volume modes. For example, if we already know that this patient is ARDS, and according to ARDS net protocol, we have to start from 6 ml per kilo, then we can set it up from the initial page and apply for ventilation starting from this ventilation coefficient. So don't forget to press apply button, since all your changes need to be implemented in the system. So by pressing the apply button, your settings, so here we have the ideal body weight and ventilation coefficient is configured. The next stage of setting up the ventilator, it's a connection settings, and here we have also options. We have invasive or non-invasive ventilation types, and for invasive, if we are supposed to ventilate our patient in an invasive way, we have a possibility to select the tracheostomic or endotracheal tubes and select the proper tube diameter. It is also very important to select the proper settings and never to have a difference between tube size, which is inserted in patient trachea, and the tube which you have selected in patient interface, in graphic user interface of ventilator. Why it is important? Because ventilator has a record of resistance and compliance of ET tube, and if you will try to activate tube resistance compensation, the compensation criteria and compensation data will be used according to the records for the tube diameter you have selected here. So if you select tube, let's say 8 millimeters, but in real patient has different tube size, then the ventilation could come to alarms, to misreadings of volumes, misreadings of flow, and then you probably face with the potential issues of the ventilator application on the patient. Therefore, try to configure the ventilator according to the situation we have and according to size of tubes and the type of tube which is inserted during the invasive ventilation type. If we select a non-invasive ventilation, here ventilator gives you next 3 options. That's important thing if to compare to other ventilators. While if you speak about the Draeger, for example, they have only 2 types of ventilation, invasive and non-invasive, and no options after that. But here you have still selection for different patient interfaces, because it is really important to select the proper interface, which will be the most effective for the patient respiratory support. As a classic one, on default, by selecting non-invasive ventilation, you will get mask interface as the common interface. The second one, it's a helmet interface, which is considered as the most efficient non-invasive ventilation, and it was proven during the COVID situation, while majority of doctors and clinicians and opinion leaders consider this type of ventilation as the most effective that can prevent escalation to intubation for patients with a moderate breathing failure in initial stage of COVID, and not only COVID, but also other pathology, which is linked with respiratory failure. So we do have a specific selection for the non-invasive ventilation for the helmet, and the interface gives you idea about the circuit layout, because for this kind of interface, you have to connect circuit in different way. It's also dual link, but no patient Y. The helmet is connected in between the inspiratory and expiratory link, and the flow sensor need to be connected to the ventilator, to the expiratory valve. So this is the layout which is described on this menu. If you are planning to ventilate your patient with a helmet, you have to select this and assemble circuit accordingly. I would like to point out that never try to perform the self-tests with this kind of circuit layout. Self-test or preparation of the device need to be performed on classic dual limb circuit with the patient Y and the flow sensor connected. And later on, you will need to reconnect if you are planning to make a helmet ventilation procedure, but self-tests need to be performed on classic circuit connection. And the third one, it's a high flow oxygen therapy, which is single limb without flow sensor, could be with a humidifier or without, depends on the length of application of this kind of therapeutic respiratory support. And here you can select this kind of respiratory support with all of our machine. I would like to point out that all of modes, all of interfaces, all software features, they are available in basic configuration of the ventilator, and we never charge customers or end users for software features. All of our ventilators are coming full featured in basic configuration. There are also some options, but they are linked with the cost of the additional devices, like high flow nasal cannula is not a part of standard delivery set, as well as helmet is not a part of standard delivery set, but you can request to deliver this kind of interfaces, and we can deliver it in together with the ventilator. Of course, it will influence the final price of the device, but we are capable to provide you with that. The same thing related to additional monitoring channels, which we have in our ventilators. In basic configuration, both of channels SpO2 and CO2 are available on default, and SpO2 sensor and cable always available in basic configuration set, but capnograph CO2 sensor itself, it's expensive one, so you have to specify if you need this option, this sensor or not. But again, all ventilators in basic configuration are ready to plug and play CO2 sensor and to have a CO2 monitoring, including volumetric capnometry. Any questions here?
No, thanks.
Okay, let's go further. So I will go back to invasive ventilation. And I would like to show you some additional features for selection of interfaces that we have for different age category. So for adult, we have mask, helmet, and high flow oxygen therapy. For pediatric, there are only two, mask and high flow oxygen therapy. And for infants, there are more settings related to non-invasive ventilation. It's a mask, it's a nasal cannula with a different brands of nasal cannulas. So that means the clinicians, doctor can select the type of cannula, type of interface which is available in the hospital. So different manufacturers, different sizes, or NCPAP generator, which is also commonly used for non-invasive ventilation with newborn babies. It's a single limb with a MediJet generator or dual limb standard bubble CPAP circuit, which you can either apply without flow sensor or with flow sensor. So the interface of the ventilator will give you an idea how to assemble the circuit, where to connect the flow sensor, and how to proceed with the preparation of the device before connecting the patient. So without flow sensor, you need just a proximal pressure reading line. With flow sensor, proximal pressure is measured from the tube of the flow sensor. Okay, now we will go back to the outpatient and we will proceed with the last stage of preparation of the device. It's a mode selection. So all of our ventilators are equipped with the next group of ventilation modes. It's a mandatory modes, interactive modes, spontaneous ventilation modes, adaptive ventilation modes, and special ventilation modes. Mandatory and interactive, they are classic. There are practically nothing to explain. It's a volume control, pressure control, or volume guarantee or dual control mode. It's a PCVT, pressure control, volume targeted. That means that adaptive pressure regulator is applied here, and ventilator automatically achieve target volume according to the settings of the clinician, and breath by breath inspiratory pressure will be adjusted but by adaptive pressure regulator in order to achieve and maintain target volume in the range. For interactive modes, we have classic SIMV modes, volume-based, pressure-based, and volume guarantee-based. And also we have combined ventilation, 3 combined ventilation modes: pressure control, pressure support, volume guarantee, volume support, and volume control, volume support. What does it mean? It's a combination of mandatory and spontaneous ventilation mode. In other ventilators, if you know MACA ventilators, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but it would be great if you are recording this presentation. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you so much.
So if you know the ventilation modes from MACA ventilators, Servo U, Servo S, they have auto mode. That means that as soon as patient has spontaneous breathing, all cycles will be handled by spontaneous ventilation, pressure support, or volume support based. But as soon as patient lose spontaneous rate, the ventilator will be automatically switched to mandatory ventilation, which in pressure support, pressure control, pressure support will be pressure controlled, volume guarantee, or volume controlled accordingly. And 2 modes in interactive modes that we have in this list. It's a dual pressure level modes, BiPPV and APRV. BiPPV equal to BiPAP. It's a 2 PEEP levels, and patient is breathing on lower and upper PEEP with the proper settings for each mode. And ARPRV, airway pressure release ventilation, it's a mode which is using inverse ratio between inspiratory and expiratory part, and basically intended for patients. It was commonly used in patients with ARDS, while other modes were not effective, especially in terms of prevention of atelectasis. But nowadays we have more modern ventilation modes, but still these classic modes are available in our ventilators. Then spontaneous ventilation, continuous positive airway pressure with pressure support or volume support modes are available. And here you have a possibility to select either manually controlled or targeted volume support for spontaneous breaths of the patient. Intelligent or adaptive ventilation modes, it's Advent and Provent. This is 2 ventilation modes which automatically managing settings of the ventilation according to the feedback from the patient linked with the breathing mechanics of the patient. So it's so-called closed loop ventilation modes. Advent is and Provent are both they are based on Otis formula. I will explain to you later the background of its operation. We will discuss more in details what's the difference, what's the equivalence on the market, and how we should position these ventilation modes for our customers. And special ventilation mode, which is called cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It's a special ventilation mode intended for ventilation procedure during cardiopulmonary resuscitation, during chest compression during resuscitation procedure. Why it is developed? It is aimed to reduce number of personnel which is required for emergency situation for the while patient has a heart attack in the ICU. Then only one clinician is required to perform full range of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, because in classic way you need to disconnect the ventilator, connect ambu bag. One colleague is performing chest compressions, another colleague is performing ventilation. But in this case, it is not needed, and you will need just to activate CPR ventilation mode and then to start with the chest compressions, and ventilator will take care about the ventilation in automatic way with the settings according to World Health Organization recommendations, which can be also adjusted by clinician according to patient status and patient condition. So this is all about the ventilation modes, but I would like to point out that the list of ventilation modes is depends on two types. Yes, I can hear you, Hayan.
I have a question regarding the modes. Do you have a weaning mode available?
Yes, of course. These adaptive ventilation modes, they are intended for automatic weaning.
So if somebody asks us that if the ventilator has a weaning mode, we can, as an alternative mode,
you can specify that Advent and Provent are designed for automatized weaning procedure, and we have also some additional tools intended for weaning, like SBT tool, intended for proper weaning, for proper evaluation of patient for the readiness for extubation. So Advent and Provent, they are fully automatized, and they are designed for to maintain the minute volume for a patient without spontaneous breathing or with spontaneous activity. All of these modes can start from fully paralyzed patient, and as soon as patients start to awake, for example, after an anesthesia, the ventilator will manage ventilation settings accordingly to the patient condition to drive patient to fastest possible weaning, and which will be finished with the extubation and proceed with, for example, high flow oxygen therapy after extubation to ensure effective extubation. So if you're speaking about weaning modes, you can specify actually any mode can be adjusted for weaning procedure, but some of them need to be adjusted manually, like PCPS, VCVS, or PCVTVS, or BiPPV. They can be also used for weaning, but they are not automatized. It's fully manual modes. But if we are speaking about automatized weaning, then Advent and Provent are capable to do that. Okay.
Yeah. What about this Glasgow coma scale? Yeah. Sometimes they also ask for this function in the ventilator.
Glasgow coma scaling.
Yeah, scale. Because the
It's-
ventilator can adjust according to the the condition of the patient or something like this.
No. Glasgow, look, this scale is based on physical examination by the doctor, and ventilator cannot perform this examination in spite of the doctor. The doctor is scaling a patient according this scale, as analyzing the results of examination of patient conscious.
Yeah, like for example, they score a patient, and then there is any function available where they can automate the ventilator, or they have to manually adjust the settings according to the patient condition.
These modes basically are taking into account only breathing mechanics of the patient and spontaneous activity of the patient, but never the state of his conscious.
Okay.
This is very important thing.
Thank you.
The ventilator is only handling in Advent and Provent. Ventilator is handling breath rate, either mandatory or spontaneous. A ventilator is handling. Yes, I can hear you.
How long we can use these adaptive modes for the patient? How long?
The ventilator is desired to work 24/7, 365. So any mode you can use for how long patient need. There are no limitation in the usage of the ventilator on a patient. Of course, it depends on the severity of disease. It depends on the patient conditions, but ventilator designed and in the way that you can use it continuously. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So Advent and Provent, they are automatically handling settings like breath rate. They automatically handling settings like inspiratory pressure or inspiratory or tidal volume, and also IE ratio is automatically managed by the ventilator. In this case, the ventilator is adjusting the settings in order to maintain desired minute volume, which doctor selected. I will explain you the settings of each mode of these two modes. I will not stop by on each and every ventilation mode because we don't have even one day wouldn't be enough for that. But I will briefly explain you the settings for this ventilation. So as soon as we selected mode, let's say I will select the pressure control mode, then the ventilator will show us settings of each and every ventilation mode. So the doctor can adjust the ventilation settings according to patient condition and apply and start ventilation. So the last stage, so we tested device, we configured the patient, we configured the patient interface, we selected ventilation mode, it is highlighted now, and here we can start with the pressure controlled ventilation accordingly. As soon as we press this button, ventilator will switch to cycling, and you can connect the patient for a ventilation. So by this function, we have other possibilities to configure the ventilator to improve our visualization, to improve our information data, for better analysis by clinician, for better understanding, and as well to make some additional actions related to measurements, related to maneuvers, and so on. So on the lower right corner, you can see button which is called page. Here we have possibility to list 3 pages on default. One page is pre-configured on the curves and monitoring data, main monitoring. Second page, it's one big graph and then small curves and breathing mechanics data on the right part. And the third page, it's a big numbers mode intended basically for transportation, in case if the patient is being transferred from ward to diagnostic or for in-hospital, out-hospital transportation, this big numbers mode is useful for such a purposes. Each page can be individually configured by the doctor using the view button here. So by pressing the view button, you can select the different types of layout, and you can add or remove some curves according to needs of each and every doctor. So I will go back to curves only. On the same screen, we have a possibility to add, for example, we have 3 curves, but I would like to have 5 curves, and 2 of them I have a possibility to configure not just the live curves, but also trends. For example, I'm interested in some trend, let's say oxygen concentration. Then the ventilator will display on the same screen curves, live curves, and trends, high resolution trends.
Yeah, yes, I think.
Yes. Is there any question?
Thank you so much.
And we can configure the home screen for a combined visualization of curves and trends at the same time. With the additional buttons like in freeze, we have a possibility to measure the curves and to identify some ventilation parameters accordingly. We can zoom in or zoom out each curve in order to perform this kind of measurements. Using this button. So we can select and measure breath by breath precisely and unfreeze for the ventilation. One of the other useful features we have in the interface is additional maneuvers, which we have in the menu, and we have possibility to select different kind of additional tools that could be useful during the ventilation or even after ventilation. Let's go one by one for each. We have event log with the records of all data related to a patient, 10,000 events recorded. It's so-called black box of our ventilator, which we can identify everything what happened with the ventilator, each and every alarm that has been triggered, and what kind of action has been taken by the clinician during the ventilation process. It's really helpful not only for us but also to analyze retrospectively what happened in case of any issue with the patient status. We can recall this event, we can remotely recall this event and analyze what happened with the machine. There are trends analyzes, 6 trends with the 72 hours with the possibility to analyze measured parameters, to analyze settings which were applied during the ventilation, or we have a possibility to add here some monitoring from the additional channels like oxygenation indexes, or other ventilation parameters. So they are grouped by different type. So we can select, for example, patient leakage, and then analyze the trends according to our needs. We have a possibility to recall records and screenshots, which you can see over here in the lower right part, the buttons that you can make a print screen, and then in simulator I don't have it. Yeah, we have it. And then you have a possibility to save this print screen on a USB stick connected to the ventilator, for further printout or further storage. The same thing, there is a record button, which is recording 30 seconds of curves, 15 seconds before button pressed and 15 after. Then I would like to show you this group of buttons related to monitoring channels and maneuvers with the additional features like a nebulizer or oxygen enrichment. Let's start from the monitoring channels. Here we have SpO2 monitoring, by activation of which the system will start to measure SpO2 level and will demonstrate to you the value of oxygenation saturation in the right upper corner, as well as capnography can be activated. And by going to capnography page, we have a possibility to overview also volumetric capnometry data with the anatomical dead space calculation, anatomical dead space ratio, and ventilation minute volume alveolar calculation, which will be helpful for you to analyze about efficiency of gas exchange. If we have, for example, mismatch between ventilation and circulation, this kind of monitoring will be helpful for you to understand if our settings are enough for alveolar ventilation. So we are not ventilating dead space, but we are ventilating patient according to his anthropometric data, and gas exchange and delivery of gas is correct, and there are no potential risks for a patient. Okay, and now we'll go the auxiliary pressure monitoring. This is the channel that also available in basic configuration mode. This is a channel which we have a possibility to configure what type of auxiliary pressure we are going to use. It's P-aux, that's any pressure channel, or the pressure channel which is intended for monitoring of pressure, let's say in tracheal pressure, cuff pressure, or pressure in any other part of the breathing circuit. Or you have a possibility to activate esophageal pressure monitoring, which is using the monitoring of esophageal balloon catheter pressure. By activating this mode, you have a possibility to switch to esophageal monitoring, which is provides you additional data related to esophageal balloon catheter pressure and transpulmonary pressure monitoring. It is intended for patients in critical conditions, while the balloon catheter is inserted in patient esophagus, and the balloon catheter pressure corresponds to pleural pressure in the patient chest. And it is helpful for doctor to understand the breathing mechanics better and to apply ventilation settings correction according to these additional monitoring parameters. Next part in our menu, we have oxygen enrichment. This is the settings that we can adjust the maximum level of oxygenation that will be applied during suctioning procedure or during oxygenation procedure. Some of the patients, they cannot tolerate high oxygen percentage, like premature newborns or a neonatal patient. It is not likely to use high oxygen concentration during the suctioning procedure. So you can limit the maximum oxygenation level to 80%, and then by applying the oxygenation, the oxygen level will be increased not to 100, but to the level which we have selected in the menu of the ventilator. Okay. The next part is a nebulizer. All of our ventilators are equipped with a pneumatic nebulizer system, and you can activate nebulizer, select the nebulization time, and start. Yes.
Oxygen enrichment, like oxygen and the suction, both are different things. Like that, we provides a high amount of oxygen, but the suction is just like a vacuum system or like that.
No, before each and every suction, you need to prepare the patient for this stressful procedure. Suctioning or with the disconnection of patient will be always linked with the desaturation, with the dropping the SpO2 level, and with the obstacles to deliver the tidal volume to patient pathways. Therefore, the specific procedure is applied for a patient during the suctioning procedure. Before you are planning to start the suctioning, you press the oxygenation or suction, and patient will be pre-oxygenated for 2 minutes in order to saturate patient with oxygen and to make this procedure less stressful for basically brain of the patient. So after 2 minutes of pre-oxygenation, there is a stage of disconnection. While ventilator is being disconnected from the patient and suction catheter is inserted to patient pathways in order to remove these secretions for patient trachea and bronchs. So in this case, patient doesn't getting the tidal volume. Patient has no efficient gas exchange, and doctor has to minimize this time in order to not to get potential complications from the patient side. And as soon as oxygenation is or the suctioning is finished, patient again connected to the ventilator, and post-oxygenation stage being applied with this increased oxygen concentration in the breathing mixture in order to saturate patient again with the necessary oxygen level in order to reduce potential impact on brain during the suctioning. Okay. Or in some cases, if patient has a significant drop of oxygen level, blood gases, doctor can activate oxygenation in order to flush oxygen, increased oxygen in breathing mixture for 2 minutes. By pressing again, this function will be deactivated, and the ventilator will proceed with the previous oxygen concentration.
Like it will be for the require for two types of things, like one for suction and one for
Yeah.
oxygenation. If the poor oxygen patient getting from internally, so we can provide by this adjusting and increase the oxygen, and we
Yeah.
can deliver more
Yeah.
oxygen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Second thing is that we can additionally add the suction with the patient, and now on that time it will be happen, right?
We can prepare a patient for suction. So if we activate suctioning procedure, so it's practically the same way of operation. Then the ventilator will start with the oxygenation, and as soon as you disconnect the ventilator from patient, the ventilator is identify that patient has been disconnected, and there will be no alarms, and ventilator will wait for connection patient back. And then as soon as you connect patient back to the ventilator will be resumed with increased oxygenation level with a counter. Here you can see counter for 2 minutes.
Yes, we can see that. The time running is started for that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. The next part, it's a maneuvers. And here we have additional maneuvers and tools in the hands of the doctor, where the doctor have a possibility to perform some additional diagnostic procedures or additional settings for existing ventilation mode in order to achieve some points. If you speak about PSI maneuver, it's prevention of atelectasis, or in other words, it can be considered as automatic recruitment procedure while patient is being inflated a little bit higher for periodically in order to eliminate atelectasis in the patient lung, to eliminate collapsing lungs during the ventilation process, especially for ARDS patients who has inflammatory process in lungs. And our classic settings after continuous time of ventilation wouldn't be the same way effective to prevent atelectasis. The PIP-PSI maneuver can be applied for such a patients. In this case, doctor has to set up the level of PIP increased, and then for how many cycles this increased PIP will be applied, and which interval this increased PIP will be repeated for such a patient. In our case, every 3 minutes for 2 cycles, the PIP will be increased for 9 centimeters of the water or millibars in order to inflate patient a little bit more and to prevent atelectasis in their lungs. As soon as we activate PIP-PSI, there will be demonstration of that PIP-PSI have been activated, and you can see on the curves over here that PIP has been increased for 2 cycles and then decreased back to the initial value, and ventilation will be processed with the classic PIP 5, but here we have about 9. Okay. The next part of maneuvers, the next part of the maneuver, it's PV tool. It's a pressure volume loop, which we can select, but we have to the ventilator reminding to the doctor that this tool can be harmful for a patient. Yes, is there a question?
Why is
I have a
this
question.
harmful to you?
Yes.
I wanted to ask if this maneuver is available in other ventilators, or we are the only one who have the maneuver facility.
PV tool? You mean PV tool maneuver or PIP-PSI maneuver?
Both.
Yeah, it's not unique maneuvers. It's maneuvers which are available in other brands of ventilators, and it's not a unique thing. This is standard additional tools for expert class ventilators, which are helpful for a doctor to adjust or to assess patient conditions during the ventilation process. Just each and every tool, it has specific indications and contraindications, and if PIP tool is not that way harmful, then PV tool can be really harmful for a patient, taking into account that the critical pressure level can be achieved here, or critical impact on central hemodynamic can be achieved also during the performance of the PV tool. Therefore, as soon as you select PV tool, there will be a disclaimer that doctor has to make aware and sure that he knows what he is doing, and some potential consequences can be may have a result here by application of this tool. So basically, PV tool is used for mandatory ventilated patients, for paralyzed patients only. It shouldn't be used for spontaneous patient who has spontaneous activity. And the aim of this tool is to identify the upper and lower inflection point in order to adjust our current ventilation settings according to the parameters of the breathing mechanics of the patient. So the doctor is selecting the top airway pressure, the doctor selecting the total time of maneuver. As longer maneuver is performed is better, but we have to keep in mind that impact on central hemodynamic can be significant here, and we need to make balanced settings for each and every patient in order to eliminate potential risk for his status. And as soon as we start this maneuver, I'm not sure if I have this functionality in the simulator, but it looks like not. We do have. Okay. The ventilator will gradually increase the airway pressure slowly. So it's a quasi-static PV loop will be built here, and we can identify the change of shapes of this PV loop and identify upper and lower inflection points. It seems that I set it to very high value. So now we have a decrease. Just in my simulator, there are no display of this curve. Let's wait for it finished. So here we have, here we have this loop, and we have possibility to activate the cursors and to identify upper and lower inflection point. Why it is important for mechanically ventilated patient? Because our settings of PEEP, for example, can be not optimal for mechanically ventilated patient. And the lower inflection point represents the alveolar opening point. So our PEEP settings has match to alveolar opening point, has been should be set at little bit upper or equal to alveolar opening point, and the upper inflection point is reflecting the overdistension of lungs, and it is intended to identify the overdistension, and our peak airway pressure shouldn't exceed this upper inflection point in order to eliminate potential risk of ventilator-induced lung injury and related to these complications with the patient lungs. So the PV tool can be used to adjust the ventilation settings from one hand, but from another hand, we have a possibility to use this tool for recruitment maneuver to recruit patient lungs under the precise pressure control, slowly inflating patient lungs in order to achieve recruitment. If the lungs are recruitable, we can do that. And of course, in the memory, the ventilator will give you a possibility to record several records before medication, after medication, so we can analyze impact of or effect of our ventilation or of our medication to the patient breathing mechanics. The next part of maneuvers, it's negative inspiratory force. It's a maneuver for spontaneously breathe patient while we are planning to evaluate if patient breathing muscles are strong enough. So we are thinking about to extubate patient, but we are not sure if patient is strong enough to breathe spontaneously without any issue. And one of the objective maneuver for this case, it's a negative inspiratory force. In this case, we have to connect the patient, we have to instruct the patient that by a signal from the doctor, the patient will take a maximum deep breath. And by start of the maneuver, the patient is taking a deep breath, and then you will get these figures. Since we have just a simulation patient, there are no negative inspiratory force measured, but you will have two parameters. The first occlusion pressure of negative pressure for first 100 milliseconds, and negative inspiratory force. That means maximum achievable or maximum negative pressure achieved by patient, taking into account his spontaneous breathing effort or maximum spontaneous breathing effort. As lower we got these figures from patient, then better prognosis for his extubation we will achieve. Unfortunately, this simulator it's not works, but we do have it in each and every ventilation unit. And the next one is a weaning mode or weaning tool. This is additional tool which is useful for a patient and doctor to train a patient for weaning. During the weaning procedure, you can train patient for his breathing muscles, applying specific criteria of spontaneous breathing trial. What does it mean? It's unfortunately it's not activated in my simulator, but by activating the spontaneous breathing trial, the patient will get reduced settings of the ventilator, and he will need to breathe or to use more work of breathing to breathe on the machine spontaneously, and doctor by the result of this trial will evaluate and consider if patient is ready for extubation or not. So the doctor can adjust the initial settings for the weaning procedure or for the SBT procedure, and day by day, doctor can train patient breathing muscles in order to proceed for successful extubation and eliminate potential risk for reintubation after the decision is done. For the moment, you will have a possibility to use SBT only. EasyVean is not yet available in the software, and it is currently under tests. What does it mean? The SBT, it's a manually started spontaneous breathing trial, but EasyVean, it's automatized spontaneous breathing trial, while the doctor is setting up program for how frequently and for how long the spontaneous breathing trial will be applied for a patient, and patient will be trained in a period of from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for example. The SBT will be applied every half hour with these settings of minute volume maintained by the ventilator. So the EasyVean tool will be helpful to set up the automatized the weaning procedure during the ventilation process. That's the functions we have in these maneuvers. And there are standard settings related to volume, related to configuration of the device. We will not stop by on that. Now I would like to show you some additional monitoring features that we have available in our ventilators. I will switch to this big loop or big graph. Here we have a possibility to select different type of visualization data, different loops. It depends on the preferences of the doctor, but we have possibility also to activate the visualized animated picture of lungs. Unfortunately, our simulator doesn't have the proper connection with the SpO2 channels, but as soon as you will activate it on the ventilator, you will get the readings of SpO2 here, animated heart for the heart rate, and animated lungs according to the patient conditions. If you will have a, let's say, I will try to simulate the ARDS patient. That means our compliance will be reduced. So here we have average compliance. So this widget is aimed on proper visualization and information for a doctor to provide a visualized information for doctor about the current status of patient breathing mechanics, current status of patient spontaneous activity, about the pulse rate and SpO2 level. So now you can see that we have reduced compliance, and the animated lines is showing that there is a red by the color that reduced compliance for the patient. The same thing if you will have cardiopulmonary obstruction. This animated widget will also demonstrate changes of patient breathing mechanics breath by breath. As soon as patient will have a spontaneous activity, it will be also indicated over here. So the lung widget is demonstrating. Here you can see the indication of inspiratory resistance. For patients with obstructive disease, and in case of spontaneous effort of the patient, there will be indicated also the spontaneous effort. This new feature that you don't have in your ventilators at the moment, but as soon as you will proceed with the software upgrade, these features will be available on your devices. Other things, new things that have been added to our ventilator, it's a small settings related to automatic home screen return, automatic touch screen lock, but I suppose that you have it, and USB power that can be disabled, so the nurses will not charge their mobile phones from the ventilator. But basically, it's linked with the safety system of life support devices. While you can connect unknown device to the ventilator and theoretically influence the ventilation process, therefore, it is recommended to keep power USB off always and activate it only in case if you are planning to export recorded data to the USB stick. And here you can see we have a possibility to activate low pressure oxygen mode in the oxygen with the low pressure oxygen source. If we have 100% oxygen source, then we don't need to change anything. But if we are speaking about bedside oxygen generator, they have reduced oxygen concentration. It's about 93. And in this case, ventilator will take into account that at inlet he has not 100%, but 93 only, and the blender will be corrected accordingly to the set oxygen purity. I would like to point out that our ventilators, turbine-based ventilators, they have a possibility to blend the oxygen in LPO mode. All the other ventilators who has low pressure oxygen mode, they cannot blend oxygen. They use only the oxygen level that you have delivered to the ventilator. And it is very important because you can set up the maximum flow rate of the oxygen generator, set up the oxygen purity, which is desired by the ventilator, and you still have a possibility to adjust breathing mixture from the patient, from the interface of the ventilator, but other manufacturers, they cannot do that. So this is just a briefly I explain you some main features, some main parameters, and now we will come a little bit closer to two intelligent ventilation modes. which we have in our list, they are Advent and Provent. So Advent is full equal ventilation mode to adaptive support ventilation or adaptive minute ventilation or other ventilation modes. Basically, Hamilton Medical was the pioneer in this closed loop ventilation mode, ASV, adaptive support ventilation. And since their patent for this mode has been expired, all the other manufacturers started to offer this kind of ventilation mode because it was proven that it is effective, especially for patients who are in post-anesthesia care unit, while the ventilator automatically wean the patient to extubation without need the doctor to come and to apply fine-tuning to the ventilation settings during this weaning procedure. So the only thing the doctor needs to select, it's the oxygen concentration according to patient status and desired minute volume. It's very easy to understand that 100%, that means physiological desired minute volume. If patient has a neurotrauma, we need to hyperventilate patient, and in this case, doctor can select hyperventilation strategy or hypoventilation strategy in case if we have a COPD patient and we need to apply permissive hypercapnia settings. In this case, it is the doctor need just to set up minute volume percentage, and the ventilator will automatically calculate what will be the minute volume for a patient. So if we speak about 75 kilo patient body weight, 100%, we will get 7.5 liter per minute as a normal ventilation. Hyperventilation can be adjusted up to 350 liters per minute, 350% from desired value, and the minimum one is about 25% from the physiological range. So the other things is the trigger sensitivity and PEEP level set it manually, but you can see that in this mode there are no settings related to breath rate, there are no settings related to inspiratory pressure, no settings related to tidal volume and other things, and IE ratio are not available for end user because these parameters are automatically handled and automatically adjusted by the ventilator, taking into account breath by breath data, which is received from the patient during the ventilation process. As soon as we select this mode, we're selecting just a strategy of ventilation, sensitivity of triggers and PEEP level, and then ventilator will perform test breaths. Let me switch to classic ventilation. The ventilator applies test breath, receiving first parameters related to breathing mechanics and compliance resistance, and after that, adjusting the ventilation settings according to received data from the closed loop ventilation channel. The second mode is Provent, which is the second stage of intelligent ventilation. The main difference between Advent and Provent that mandatory breaths in Advent are pressure controlled, but in Provent it's a volume controlled. So we don't need to wait until the adaptive pressure regulator will achieve the desired tidal volume. In Provent, desired tidal volume will be delivered immediately in the next breath without overshooting or undershooting. And the same Otis formula is working to calculate the optimal breath rate, the optimal inspiratory pressure, in order to maintain desired minute volume as it's said by the doctor. Why it is very convenient for doctors? Because they're just setting up desired minute volume and ventilator will manage automatically ventilation settings without compromising the patient's safety. Why it is important? It is important because for each and every patient, the ventilator is monitoring the lung protective strategy. Let me show you here. So if we will select the vent graph, you can see the red square over here, and this red square linked with the protective strategy for patient lungs. And here we have the target and actual value of the parameter. So the ventilator, step by step, changing the parameters within the square, this red square, in order to achieve stated value. Yes. Yes, Fayed, I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. For the icon like O2, the percentage down in the screen, can we control this? Like, can we get like the icons from the right and put it down, or
These
can we
icons?
switch? Yeah, like SPO2. Can we make it like down and
No, the SpO2 and CO2, it's always in the up, because this is the most important parameters related to ventilation status, gas exchange status. But all the other parameters we can customize. We can select the parameter we need to visualize, and then, for example, I need a flow rate, inspiratory flow, and I can drag and drop to the parameter.
can we drag and drop down? Like,
yeah, you can
yes.
select any of the parameter and then drag and drop to the position where you like to see it, but not to the gas exchange parameters, because they are critical. So we can configure each and every page individually according to our needs with these parameters. As soon as
Okay, how about
yeah,
how about if I want to change O2 the percentage down in the you see the into the screen O2 like this one. Okay. So only this that I can control and can
here if
put
to
from the
control the
screen, right?
ventilator, we have the in the bottom part we have the main settings of the current ventilation mode. But if we need to get access to full range of settings, you need to press this button in the bottom, and then you will have opened window for all ventilation parameters. If we speak about the biggest number of ventilation parameters are here, so we can select it here. Or if we change the ventilation mode. So the main settings or critical settings like oxygen concentration, minute volume, trigger settings, and PEEP available here, but you have a possibility to activate some additional one, like a tube resistance compensation, etc. And then you will get these settings changed. If you need to get access to alarm limits, you can see that this is the way how the system works during the. If any alarm triggered, you have a possibility to have a shortcut. Yes, Fed. Do you have any other questions related to this? Okay, then I would like to share with you demonstration of explanation of the ProVent as a next ventilation, as a next generation of intelligent ventilation modes. Let me share with you additional screen. Just a second. So here I would like to show you some explanation related to Provent operation. So as in classic way, when we select the Provent, the ventilator is performing test breaths, and by obtaining the first parameters related to breathing mechanics, then ventilator will stop the mode breath. As soon as patient has no spontaneous activity, each and every cycle is equal to the previous one, but for Provent mode, it's a volume controlled with the exact volume delivered and sign flow pattern. That means the sign flow pattern is linked with the maximum close to spontaneous breathing pattern. But the most important part, so here, this picture related to fully paralyzed patient, no spontaneous effort. But as soon as patients start to breathe, initially patient has a weak spontaneous effort, then this spontaneous effort getting stronger, and pardon. By the end of the weaning procedure, patient is fully spontaneously breathing by himself, and the ventilator is acting according to these different stages. So now I am demonstrating you this early adaptation stage, while patient effort is not enough to take the desired tidal volume. So the patient has covered just a partially work of breathing during the ventilation. So this is the cyan part, which is linked with the patient effort. But as soon as patient effort getting weaker, then the ventilator will add ventilator component. That means tandem breath will be applied. This is the main difference between Advent and Provent. Advent is acting breath by breath. The data received from previous breath will influence the settings for the next breath. But in Provent, it's adaptation within the same cycle, in-breath adaptation. That means if patient take a weak breath, but this breath was not enough to achieve desired tidal volume, ventilator immediately adds necessary component in order to achieve desired tidal volume. So here you can see it is spontaneous effort and then mandatory part. But as soon as patient getting more stronger, he can cover all this part by his breathing muscles, and flow support will be performed by the ventilator, tidal volume achieved, but no positive pressure during inspiratory cycles will be applied. That's the key point, that it's positively impact on the central hemodynamic during weaning procedure, that it does increase dramatically airway pressure and chest pressure in patient during the ventilation. And as soon as patient is strong enough, the ventilator will provide just the flow support on demand of the patient without increasing the airway pressure. And the next part is important and related to flow demand, or the desynchronization issue. It's a common thing that patient trying to fight with the ventilator and desynchronization will be achieved. And in this case, doctor has no option rather to sedate the patient and to proceed with the mechanical ventilation. But desynchronization happens much frequently. And we don't, if we will sedate patient with each occasion of desynchronization, then we will be never able to achieve a successful extubation or a successful weaning. Therefore, synchronization and eliminating factors of fighting with the ventilator has very important place during the weaning procedure. And ProVent has this kind of tools, which is eliminating potential risks for a patient and allow patient to take a breath, even if patient is trying to take a spontaneous breath on mandatory breath. Here you can see two pictures of the spontaneous effort of the patient on mandatory breath of the ventilator. Here you can see the weak effort on mandatory breath, and here you can see strong effort on mandatory breath. You can see that ventilator applying additional flow into the circuit in order to cover demand of the patient, but without immediately pressure increase in patient airways is stopped, since the patient is performing this force of breathing by himself. And as soon as patient getting strong effort, there will be no pressure increase in comparison to mandatory cycle, which you can see over here. So this is desynchronization, which is called breath on mandatory breath. And here, ventilator will allow patient to take a breath at any stage of mandatory breath. Here you can see the mandatory breath is ending, but patient would like to take a spontaneous breath by the end of mandatory cycle. And in old school and low-end ventilators, it is impossible. The ventilator will never give a patient such a possibility to take a breath at early expiratory stage. But in ProVent, in Uvent-T-S ventilators, it's now possible. Here you can see mandatory breath, which is ending, and patient is taking spontaneous breath. In this case, immediately flow will be delivered to patient effort, and increased tidal volume will be delivered. It is very important for patient during weaning procedure to have a possibility to realize spontaneous breathing pattern, because if the patient will be not able to realize spontaneous breathing pattern, he will fight with the ventilator. As soon as patient would like to take a deep breath and ventilator allow him to do that, patient will be in peace with ventilator, there will be no desynchronization issue, and there will be no fighting with the machine. The same thing happened if patient would like to take a spontaneous breath at early expiratory phase. While the expiratory phase already started, but patient decided to take a spontaneous breath, the ventilator detects it immediately and deliver patient flow on demand immediately, and the patient have a possibility to initiate next spontaneous cycles with no fighting with the ventilator, using this adaptive flow support mechanism. So this is just a brief explanation that just a simple breath by breath adjustment is nowadays not enough to ensure patient safety and to ensure the proper weaning procedure during the intelligent ventilation. Therefore, we are offering both of tools, Advent as the well-known technology, ASV ventilation, and ProVent, which is more sophisticated, but the same way safe and effective for patient support. So this is briefly, I explained you some points. I can see a few raised hands. Do you have questions? Hello.
They do ask us about the oxygen sensor, and when we specify that it's an ultrasonic oxygen sensor, doesn't have an expiry date, they would like to understand more on the technology.
No problem. Yeah, that's a beneficial point of our ventilators. We have designed our ventilators with the ultrasonic oxygen sensor. Ultrasonic oxygen sensor is based on totally different technology for the oxygen measurement. The classic oxygen sensors, they are based on oxidizing material or oxidizing substrate, which is chemically generates the current on the in the sensor, and this current is measured by the PCB in the ventilator. But from time to time, you have to calibrate this oxygen sensor because the current is the amount of oxidizing substrate is getting lower, and the current is changing, and you need to identify 21% and 100% point in order to get more precise measurement. In oxygen sensor, ultrasonic oxygen sensors that we are using in our ventilators, the technology is based on the ultrasonic waveform track time. We have a chamber, and on this chamber, the oxygen is, or breathing mixture is running through the chamber, and device is measuring the track time of ultrasonic waveform through the chamber. This track time depends on oxygen concentration, and there are no any oxidizing material. There are nothing which can influence the accuracy of this sensor. There is only one limitation for this sensor, that it is intended, or it is suitable for binary gas only. What does it mean binary? That two components of gas. In our case, we have excellent binary gas for the breathing mixture, which we consider as the oxygen and nitrogen. All the other gases, their concentration is very low, and we can ignore them, considering breathing mixture as a binary gas. And for this case, ultrasonic oxygen sensor is calibrated only once on the factory, and during all the entire period of its lifetime, it doesn't require any additional calibration, maintenance, or replacement. Therefore, we are offering lifetime warranty for this part of our ventilators.
But without the calibration, how we make sure like it's measuring correctly?
Because the track time, ultrasonic waveform track time in the chamber is calibrated on the factory just once, and it is not changing during the time. I mean, during the usage period. So if we are speaking, let's say at 21%, the ultrasonic waveform track time is 20 milliseconds. But for 100%, the ultrasonic waveform track time, let's say 25 milliseconds. Then the system is built up the graph, and this dependency is linear. So we are not mixing the oxygen using this sensor. We are measuring breathing mixture, FiO2, delivered to a patient. The blender itself has its own calibration table, and the blender is not linked with the ultrasonic oxygen sensor. Ultrasonic oxygen sensor is just needed to monitor delivered FiO2 to patient inspiratory limb. And we have a few cases in India during COVID period, while we had a kind of complaint that our ventilators are not showing a correct FiO2. They are showing only 70%. They are setting 100% of oxygen settings, but the monitoring of FiO2 showing only 70. But how it is possible? Then we started to investigate the situation, and we found out that all the other ventilators, other brand of ventilators, they showed 100% set, 100% measured. When we start to discover the situation, we realized that the problem was not in our ventilators, not in oxygen sensor, but problem was linked with the poor oxygen purity delivered by the supplier to the hospital. And all classic galvanic sensors have been calibrated to this low purity oxygen. So in real life, the patient received 70%, but ventilators showed 100%. I mean, other brand of ventilators were calibrated to low purity oxygen. And only by, we suggested local engineer to bring calibration gas to the hospital and to show them the measurements on the calibration gas. And finally, they realized that the problem was not on the ventilator side, but on the supplier of oxygen side. So that's one of the main benefits, that you don't need to recalibrate oxygen sensor, because sometimes if you made a calibration under conditions which are not correct, then the accuracy of measurement will be compromised, and then you will get wrong readings and wrong monitoring.
Okay, how about the other sensor like flow sensor, the SpO2?
The SpO2 and flow sensors, they're almost the same as in other ventilators. They can be reusable and disposable. SpO2 sensors we used to supply on default Massimo set, adult finger clip on default, but we have a possibility to supply sensors according to your needs. That means pediatric finger clip or multi-site reusable sensor or disposable sensors. If to speak about flow sensor, we have different types of flow sensor in our ventilator, internal and external. Internal flow sensor doesn't require any maintenance or replacement as soon as they are not damaged. But external flow sensors, they need to be changed from patient to patient. They are single patient use, and they need to be disinfected for each patient accordingly.
And what about the expiratory valve?
Expiratory valve is that we are supplying. They are autoclavable. They can be sterilized or disinfected, patient by patient.
Patient by patient. Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that I would like to point out that our expiratory valve doesn't have any flow sensors inside, and nothing comes inside the ventilator. That means we don't need to treat expired air because some of the ventilator, like a Drager G or Puritan Bennett especially, they need dual heated circuit, or they need expiratory filter heated to treat the expiratory flow, because they have a flow sensor at the expiratory cassette, and they are very sensitive to humidity, and they can be easily damaged by this humidity. In our case, we don't need to treat the expiratory air, one hand. From another hand, our expiratory valves are electromagnetically driven. They are extremely precise, and they are very durable in this case.
Like we have a flow meter, flow sensor, and expiratory valves. Both should be sterilized patient by patient, right?
Yes, but in some cases, while the hospital is using short-term ventilation, they can put bacterial filter near the patient mouth, and in this case, they don't need to replace the flow sensor and the PIP valve for each patient. They just removing the bacterial viral filter and connect next patient. But it's for short-term ventilation only.
What temperature should we give from the sterilization for these things?
You can refer to user manual, where you can find a chapter for cleaning and sterilization, and there are examples of sterilization and cleaning for each and every part of the breathing circuit and the flow sensor and PIP valves.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can you mention the strong points of our ventilator compared to Drager?
Of course. First, it's an ultrasonic oxygen sensor which is maintenance-free, calibration-free, lifetime warranty. In some Draeger ventilators, they use 2 oxygen sensors simultaneously. Maintenance cost. The service kit for Draeger costs incredible money. In our case, we have everything practically reusable. We just recommend to change by the first year of operation. We recommend to change flow sensor and PEEP valve, but it depends on how hardly the device being used. If device is not used frequently and until the flow sensor and PEEP valve mechanically not damaged, they can be used for further period. In Draeger ventilators, there are plenty of different items need to be replaced, changed, and it costs a huge money. Next part related to set of ventilation modes, which are available in different, in basic configuration, let's say. We have a philosophy that everything is available in the basic configuration. That means that basic set is full-featured ventilator. In Draeger, you have to pay for each and every mode, each and every function in each and every tool. And if we speak about full-featured ventilator, then the final cost of full-featured Draeger will be too high or a few times higher than full-featured Uvent-S ventilators. Next part, if you're speaking about turbine-based ventilator, we have also, we are providing lifetime warranty for the blower. In Draeger, they have limited warranty for a blower, limited operation time. And if you're speaking about the edge category, the turbine-based ventilators are not suitable for infants.
Blower, you mean turbine or what?
Yeah, blower, turbine, flow generator. So
every how many hours?
Draeger, I don't know how many hours they are stating with the new Savina ventilator, but it was, as far as I know, it was about 40,000 hours. Limited for them, but we are not limiting. We are giving lifetime warranty. And of course, Draeger never has SpO2 channel in their ventilators. They have optionally CO2 available, but never SpO2. That's just briefly, without linking to the model.
Talk about the parameters display. Do you have any unique parameters or
Unique? We have not unique, but parameters which are useful by the doctors, and they are not available for other ventilators. For example, oxygenation ratio. It's or saturation ratio. It's a ratio between SpO2 level and FiO2 delivered. It's a very useful information for a doctor to identify the efficiency of gas exchange for ARDS patients. While by this parameter, they can predict the severity of the breathing failure and to take a decision about the intubation. Or ROX index. That's monitoring parameters which are useful for doctors to evaluate the condition of patient and to timely consider about the intubation. In Draeger ventilators, again about the Draeger ventilators, nobody from ventilators, no one doesn't have selection of helmet ventilation in the interface. This is our strong point, and nobody has it. They can recommend, but in interface they don't have a selection of helmet ventilation as a type of non-invasive ventilation. For others, they are not very specific, and some other manufacturers could have such a parameters like a stress index, like RSBI. Practically everybody has. So Breath-by-breath monitoring parameters are practically all high-class ventilators, they can manage its monitoring. Some calculations could be available in other brands, but they are not crucial.
So there is any
Is there any
mixture points which are available?
Sorry, one by one. Yes.
There is
okay? Is there
also
any specifications that we can introduce into tenders that's only unique to our ventilator?
Yes, we do have such a standard specification that you can apply. The only thing that it depends on the country. In some countries, we do not recommend do that because they will have there will be complaint from the competitors that these standard specs written in favor of single brand only, and you will be not able, nobody can offer the same. We have such an average standard specs where some of the parameters they are, if you're evaluating that just one by one, then these requirements meets more than one brand. But if to analyze all together, only we are suitable for this tech spec. So we do have such a file, and we can share it with you later.
Okay, if we need to put one spec or two spec to be, make it the tender related to us.
Mm-hmm. Then if
Which
you will specify helmet ventilation selection, then it will be linked to us only.
Helmet what?
I'm not here. I'm not hearing. Yes.
You can select or you can specify helmet ventilation selection in the interface of ventilator, and then nobody can meet this requirement except us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
1 minute to record. 1 minute to write these points because it's important.
Yeah, there are plenty of locking points we do have in our ventilator. Ultrasonic oxygen sensor, only Maquet is offering. Nobody offer the same. You can, if you specify, let's say not ultrasonic, but permanent oxygen sensor, that means other manufacturers, they can offer optionally paramagnetic oxygen sensor. But in this case, their price will rise minimum by $1,000 or even more. And in this case, you will have a competition in the specs, but on the price level, you will be always better.
Ultrasonic sensor. This may be also the third company, the third part who make it on in surface. Sometimes they participate in the choice or to select the ventilator. In this time, the third part who responsible about maintenance maybe not to choose us. If we told them you don't need to change the sensor or oxygen sensor unlimited. So this also point, if you told sometimes you must know, you must check if the company, if this hospital has third company to maintenance or no. Because if they has third company for maintenance, sure 100% percentage not to choose you because this meaning you will yes, you will deduct from them some money, right? Okay.
Every market has a specific things and specific conditions. We are trying not to influence.
What about point also? What about point also 8 kilograms? Are there in the market 8 kilogram? Built in turbine and the 8 kilogram?
Yes, there are some ventilators with even lower weight, like a Hamilton C3, a C2, and C1, but their functionality is much lower. They are not expert class ventilators.
Are your ventilator working in air?
For aircrafts, you mean the aircrafts?
Yeah, for emergency. Because this
No.
question was,
Officially,
in
no.
Malaysia sometimes more island. It's important.
We don't have a certification for aircraft since the certification takes time and we didn't perform it yet. But we have experienced that our ventilators are used in emergency aircraft and helicopters in Libya and in Libya. As far as I know, there are a few companies who are using our ventilators. But officially, we don't have a clearance for certification for aircrafts. It's just linked with the test reports, not with the possibility of using these ventilators. But basically, we are not positioning our ventilators as emergency ventilators, as a transport ventilators. We are positioning our ventilators as the ICU, continuous use ventilators, compact size, which can be used for transportation, but not intended for transportation. We have certification for ambulances only for Uvent MS model, which is makes it possible to use in ambulance. With the transport incubators, we have a lot supplied in Mexico for infants with the transport incubators.
For
Yes.
our ventilator, is it water resistance?
IP32.
What grams required, like infants, the less gram we can attach with the patient?
Pardon?
Pounds. Like for the patient units that we are using for that, how
0.3
much
0.3 kilo. Minimum tidal volume is 2 ml, maximum tidal volume 4 liters, minimum body weight of patient to be ventilated 0.3 kilo. 300 grams.
and the grams of the child, like pounds, the short, like as you know, the neonatal sometimes have not good condition, very
Mhm.
weak in a body weight. So the body weight of the unit, so it adapt how much it would be.
The body weight of neonate is 300 grams, starting from 300 grams.
Till 250 gram,
Let
till
me
250
show
kilo.
you. Let me show you over here. Can you see it? So new patient, neonatal, and body weight. So minimum is 0.3, maximum 10 kilo. For infants. For pediatric, weight is starting from 3 kilo and up to 44 kilo. And for adults, we can set up weight as well. It's up to 250 kilo, starting from 70. No, here we have just a height set it. So the minimum is 30 kilo up to 250 kilo. Is that clear?
Yes, Claire, I have one more question.
Yes.
There is about the height. If the doctor is not available in the emergency case, so the nurse can put the height of the patient. So this ventilator will adapt the each and everything of the patient, like the modes, if we put it in the advanced modes or provide.
Yeah. The height would be enough to calculate the ideal body weight. And it's much easier to identify because all emergency stretchers, they have this possibility to measure approximately the height of the patient, and then the ideal body weight will be calculated. So if we go back to new patient, Just height is enough to configure the patient. Later on, if a doctor considers that nurse set it up incorrectly during the ventilation, there is a possibility to adjust the settings according to the real status of the patient. From here.
So the ventilator itself to sense the breath and the condition of the patient. It will work like give the a specific mode what it required for the patient.
Yeah. All the settings will be linked to anthropometric data, and the delivery of ventilation parameters will be linked with the patient size.
Then we need to set up the advent mode, like after putting up the height, and then we need to set the mode of advent or provent for the patient.
You would like me to demonstrate?
No. I don't want to like to demonstrate. I just asked you about that. If any nurse can put the height or weight of the patient, so the ventilator sense itself, and does she need to select the mode or ventilator itself
No.
go to
In
the
any case, the mode need to be selected. Of course, the ventilator will never select the mode to the patient anthropometric data, because it depends on the patient conditions. It depends on the additional parameters which are on the responsibility of the doctor. So ventilator is a tool in hands of the doctor, and only doctor can select the mode, because some of the modes could be even better for this patient. But in any case, doctor is responsible for mode selection, for setting selection, and other things. Ventilator is just a tool, and doctor is selecting all the rest and confirming all the rest. By ventilator can just suggest or propose type of ventilation modes. In our case, it's a last ventilated modes, 4 last ventilated modes. But anyway, doctor has to select and to confirm.
So the advent and provent doesn't choose the mode, but it changes the parameters of the mode that we already selected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I have a question regarding the sensors of the ventilator. Is it possible that the sensor sensitivity can change during the ventilator's lifetime?
Sensitivity of which sensors?
For example, the flow sensors.
Yeah, the flow sensor.
Or the pressure sensors.
Yeah, pressure sensors will be never change the sensitivity. The flow sensor, since the differential pressure sensor is the proximal flow sensor, is based on differential pressure sensor. And from time to time, to improve accuracy of this sensor, it needs to be calibrated or zero it. Therefore, every 15 minutes, ventilator automatically performs the zeroing of this flow sensor in order to keep accuracy in the range. Of course,
how's the calibration process can be conducted?
Pardon?
How's the calibration process can be conducted?
Automatically, this calibration is handled automatically, but there are also calibration menu in the interface. Let me show you here. So we need to stop the ventilation. You cannot make a calibration on the cycling ventilator. Then in menu, you can see the calibration is available, and we have 3 types of calibration available for end user. So flow generator calibration, you don't need to perform frequently, only in case if you move ventilator from with a big difference for the altitude. Let's say ventilator has been used on the sea level, and then you go to mountains for 4,000 meters above the sea level, and you need to, it is recommended to make a calibration of flow generator because the ventilator has inbuilt automatic altitude compensation, but generator performance will be different. I mean, blower or turbine performance will be different on a sea level and in a mountains level. Therefore, it is recommended to perform the flow generator calibration from time to time, or in case if you make a huge difference in above the sea level. Recommended time frame for flow generator calibration is about once per month or once per 3 months, depends on how frequently the device being used. Expiratory valve calibration and flow sensor calibration you need to perform as soon as you connect a new and as soon as you change this kind of accessory. Let's say you remove the PEEP valve and send it for sterilization, and you are connecting a new PEEP valve, and in this case it is recommended to make a calibration. The same thing with the flow sensor. If you remove the flow sensor and connect another one, it is better to make a calibration. The calibration is handled quite easy. You just start the calibration. The system will ask you to make sure that circuit assembled correctly with open patient Y, and then start with the calibration, and then you will get a message that it is succeed. You don't need to play with the flow sensor like with the Hamilton ventilators. Then you need to connect, change the inverse position, reverse position, and etc. You don't need to do that in our ventilators. Just simply make sure that it is properly connected and start the calibration until it will, and wait until it will be finished automatically.
And the same thing applies to the differential pressure flow sensors, right?
Differential pressure flow sensor is automatically calibrated during the ventilation process.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
This is the main difference, that flow sensor itself calibrated while patient is not connected, but differential pressure flow sensor is calibrated while the ventilator is running on the patient.
Automatically?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
The planned preventive maintenance required, and what time do we need?
Yeah, if you refer to user manual, there is a 6 years maintenance schedule in the user manual. We do recommend to perform a preventive maintenance every year at least, but it depends on the operational conditions. If the ventilator, let's say turbine-based ventilator, is used in dusty environment, then we do recommend to make it more frequently, but not really than once per year, every 12 months. And we have a list of parts to be checked, replaced. Basically, we have specific training for preventive maintenance, for service maintenance of our ventilators, and it is step by step described. If to speak about the replacements, during first year, we recommend to check and replace, if necessary, flow sensor and PEEP valve. During the second year, again, check and replace, if necessary, PEEP valve and flow sensor and SpO2 sensor. Then check the cooling fans if they are polluted with dust. Clean and wash inlet filters every year for turbine-based ventilator, and to perform calibration and software update. That's it. For third year, you will need to check the battery capacity, and if the degradation of battery is identified, then replace the battery.
Thank you.
And then this cycle is repeating every 3 years.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
For the nasal cannula, which is it from our brand, or a different brand can be used?
Different brand can be used. You can, if to speak about adult high flow nasal cannula, so practically every type of brands they are suitable here. There are no specific brand limitations. For infant nasal cannula, there are different models, different manufacturers, and if you can find the manufacturer in our interface, then it's better to select this one. If not, there is just a standard nasal cannula, which you can select just by the size, because for neonates it's critical the size of prongs, distance from prongs, but it will not be not very significant for ventilation process. Basically, it's required for proper alarms recognitions, like a disconnection or occlusion during the ventilation process. So we have open system, and other brands are compatible as well.
So other brands for the breathing circuit and nasal cannula?
Yes, yes. It's open. We have open system. The only specific items, it's a PEEP valve and flow sensor. All the other parts can be used from local suppliers, from local or from available in hospital brands. Okay. Any other questions?
Any questions, but I just want to, can you share with us the file? Just now you told us you would share with us, and also the maintenance, the one you just said first year. What's the, sometimes in the presentation they do ask us briefly, like things like this.
The basic information regarding that is available in user manual, but of course we do recommend to pass the service training for maintenance and the servicing of our ventilators. We can plan to do that as soon as you will have enough ventilators. We usually visit our customers and train service staff for this purpose. The number of ventilators we have supplied to Malaysia is not enough for the moment, so we can initiate by online, but we do recommend to have an offline training session with the issuance of service authorized service certificates for those engineers who pass this training. Of course, there is, beside of the maintenance, there is the repairment, there is a acceptance check. You have to have certain testers for that, and we all explain this, and we have specific recommendations for that that we used to share during the service training sessions. But initially, you can refer to user manual, and all basic information is available there. Okay. Thank you for your attention. It was a great pleasure for me to explain it briefly. I will do my best to manage our visit soon to you to make the offline training. And if you have no questions, or do you still have some?
Yeah, actually, we would like to have a service online.
Service online training, then you will need to send the request to Dr. Hazem and to my colleague Sergey. We can schedule it accordingly. The only thing that the number of devices you currently have in Malaysia is not big enough, and the efficiency could be compromised because you will not deal with it every day. Comparing to, let's say, other countries where we have hundreds of machines in the field, and this information is essential for them to perform everyday activity. But we do not refuse any company who willing to perform this kind of training. The only thing that the amount of hours that we can offer you online is limited, but in any case, you can schedule it and we can arrange it for you upon agreed schedule.
Actually, our sales team is working very hard to promote this ventilator all over Malaysia right now, and also in Saudi Arabia. So almost per week, we have more than 4 demonstrations. That's why we wanted this presentation to enhance our demos there also. So we are hoping for more projects to come soon. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
For some specific projects, if you have some projects where you're supposed to have big number of ventilators, and the introduction for end user has a crucial impact on the decision makers, you can request our support. We can come together with your team and to arrange this kind of demonstrations. We did it with the distinguished medical world already in the past. Unfortunately, not yet finished project, but we are here to assist you, to support you. So if you need any kind of our assistance or documentation or demonstration files, please send us requests and we will help you with that.
Thank you so much. It was actually a very informative presentation. Thank you so much for your time. I just had a word where I think we really like the stimulation. How did you do the stimulation?
The simulation
presentation
software can be shared with you. The only thing that it is for internal use only. It's not intended for clinical use, not intended for sharing with the third parties. That's the general disclaimer. We need to make sure that we have signed NDA agreement and it is effective between our companies, and then we can provide this software. But before that, we can share with you all necessary brochures, leaflets, specifications, etc., or presentations that will be more useful for you, because to use the simulator, you have to have a certain experience to use it in an effective way.
Okay, it would be great if you share with us other things you just mentioned.
Okay, thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you, Uncle. Bye.
Thank you.
We are ready to sign the NDA at any time, and we'd like to have the simulation software.
Okay.
So just let's be in touch, and you can request via Dr. Hazem, or just send me some requests about documentations and so on. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Good day, everyone.